Alright, holiday video, response video. So, generally speaking, yeah, I made a pretty good video actually. My video that he plays clips of in this video was a pretty good one. Response video to Matt and holiday, whatever. There's some good stuff in there. But anyway, I lay out the argument again, and they keep complaining I lay out the argument and they don't argue the argument. Even though I've said that argue the argument a million times also, they don't argue what I say, they just argue some nonsense, some made up imaginary argument that they're going to make someday that they don't make. The argument from preventing harm isn't necessarily a good thing argument or something like that, which is just insane. So there's just no point in having the conversation, I suppose, but might as well. So 2 previous videos he does some ragging about different things. He says I've complained a couple of times about the fact that he put Benatar's name in the title and he's arguing my argument and then saying he's defeated Benatar, which is really bogus when he hasn't read the guy's book. So I'm just saying that's rather lame. That's like saying you defeated Inmendham if you defeat somebody who argues Inmendham's argument. You know, it's just a cheap shot, and that's why I complained about it, is because it was rude to Benatar, fuckhead. I mean, you really can't say you defeated his argument when you didn't read his fucking book. You know, maybe I did a bad job defending his argument. You know, I think I defeated you. I think you have some sort of perverse and psychotic perception of reality. I think you won an argument by claiming preventing harm isn't a good. So if you think that's a winning argument, you're going to go with that, fine, but I don't think you won the argument. So whatever. So anyway, enough of that. Then his basic argument is that this philosophy is too simple. So the argument from evolution and material determinism is too simple. Somehow it's my fault that the universe gets simpler as you start dissecting, not more complicated. We're the complicated thing. And the parts are simple. The GI tract is simple. The reproductive idea, simple. The motivating psychology, simple. And that these parts are tools in a, you know, again, to metaphor evolution as a gladiator war, as a test of skills at decomposing your competition. That's what it is. I'm sorry you don't like the metaphor. It's not even a metaphor. It is the first game. It is the first game of Gladiator War. Gladiator War was a copy. Okay? When they did the Gladiator thing, they were copying evolution. So it's not even a metaphor, it's the original. So I think it's just kind of silly. So yeah, just, you know, the argument from it's too simple. No, there's no such thing as the argument from it's too simple an answer. The answer is very simple. It's a replicating DNA molecule. DNA molecules don't have a whole lot of imagination, so they just rely on creating eyes and ears, okay, teeth, vomit, you know, kinds of weapons. And some are more or less effective depending on what environment you're in. But that's what they're all tool-enabled organisms on Earth. I don't know whether you've noticed that, but they all have tools for ripping each other to pieces, or infecting them, or, you know, I mean, monitor lizards, you know, they bite and infect the people they bite. They don't make them bleed to death. They make them die of an infection. I mean, come on. All right. Premises. Okay, now this is his most brilliant accusation, that somehow your premises or your axioms have to have axioms, and then they have to have logic. So apparently you can't have an axiom. You can't have a premise supporting your logic. Somehow you have to have, it has to be logic all the way down. There is no foundation on which logic is based. And that's another ludicrous, imbecilic, nonsensical. Doesn't work that way. There's a premise, there's a place you're going to get to a bottom where it's the bottom. It's such a rudimentary and fundamental fact that you can't explain it any better than just saying water is wet. There's not going to be a better way to say it, and there's no better way to say the idea that value is created by repulsion and attraction. That it's created by things that are comfortable and uncomfortable. Yeah. And like I said, you can't get them, then we don't need to talk to each other, do we? What's the point? I mean, if you don't understand that, if you don't understand a sentient being in terror or horror is bad and would be good to prevent, I have no help for you. Alright. And lastly, I don't know. Yeah, but anyway. But anyway, yeah, I can't put axioms underneath the axioms. I just can't. You can't go any lower than fundamental value is created by sentient organisms having experiences that are qualitatively different. I just can't explain it any simpler than that. The only way you could derive value is that it has to implicate a sentient and harm it in some way. So you go ahead and show me a value in the universe that exists independent of a sentient's welfare. Go ahead, show it to me. Anyway, well, he's too stupid. He's one of these value relativists even. I mean, I just wouldn't, you know, that you can just make it up. That whatever you make up is the truth. Because there is no truth. So that's he actually believes that. So if you actually believed that murdering people and barbecuing them was fun, you actually enjoyed doing it, there would be no prohibition against it, no reason for you to think there's anything wrong with it if you enjoy it. Yeah, see, the reason to think there's something wrong with it is the fact that you wouldn't want it to happen to you. So that's the one that should give it away. That's another one of these axioms. That it's likely that your consciousness is similar to other people's consciousnesses, and the fact that you can be in states you don't like to be in means that they can be in states they don't like to be in, and that it's bad being in states you don't want to be in. I mean, you just can't get any more. I can't. Yeah, and so it's somehow there's an error here, because yeah, the truth is simple, and you won't even counter argue it, and that's somehow a failing of mine. Anyway, alright, so this is part of my video, and then he's going to talk here, so we'll play this shit.
Inmendham has observed and observes the mechanistic deterministic inevitabilities and futilities in life, in the rules of the cosmos.
So he's saying I've recognized futilities. It's not how I would put it. So even that's kind of, but whatever. See how, I mean, all this. So how long of this? That was like 60 seconds of saying absolutely nothing. Yes, Inmendham claims life has a futile nature. Yeah.
And this forms the basis of his analogy.
No, it forms it's a conclusion drawn. But whatever, it's not the basis. What forms the basis is the recognition of value.
Okay.
The zero-sum game.
For contextualizing life as running a maze. He's drawing and attaching the feelings of.
So see that, attaching the feelings of. No, there's no feelings involved. It's a description that there's a game nature to nature. Alright, that's how evolution works. It creates an arena for the demonstration models to go beat the crap out of each other. And whatever demonstration model wins, that little bit of DNA goes to the next day. Not complicated. To explain how the analogy doesn't fit. If you're going to protest the analogy, explain what fact is inconsistent with it. You won't do that.
Futility and pointlessness to the idea of running a maze, the idea of attaching the emotional content of feeling trapped.
Never. I've made no video where I talked about a feeling of trapped. None of that. This is just crap. It's a description of the function of evolution. Alright? It does nothing to do with any emotional reaction. It's not in any of the videos. It's not in this video. Fuck you.
Feeling.
Feeling. No, it's a dissection and description. Dissection, description. No feeling involved.
Running a maze at somebody else's behest, perhaps.
Again, not part of the subject. No, what the argument has been made is that yes, you're using other people, you're imposing on them, abusing them to gain your advantage in the gameplay, essentially giving birth to them to whip your adversaries and gain your ego gratifications. Having children as social security policies. This is the kind of stuff that happens on planet Earth. Dimwit.
And he hopes to relate to you in this analogy, to persuade you that life is in fact a maze. No.
Is in fact a maze. So I'm trying to demonstrate it to be in fact what? A maze on a piece of paper? Yeah, that's right. I'm making the argument and saying there's no evidence of it being anything else. There's no other agenda. It's a replicating molecule, a contest to decide what replicating molecule has the best beat-em-up bot, okay, the best bully, the best enforcer, okay, and then just go round 2, round 3, round 4. They just do that forever. And there's no function in the process.
Well, there's no limitations on this analogy. Once he's embedded the analogy within his argument, he then proceeds as though it is actually a maze, and that there is no breakdown in the.
Yeah, it's not. Again, so you just keep playing the game with words. The analogy is clear. Okay, it fits in the category of a game style system. Yeah, it's maze style system. Alright, there's an objective, a goal, and there's obstacles to achieving the goal. Not complicated.
This analogy. Whereupon limitations of the analogy is revealed.
Yeah, well, where did you reveal them? Nowhere. Where do you explain them? Nowhere. So this is just a big fat lie. You've done none of that work.
There are no features of the analogy that are defective in that they don't have similar correlates. None of worth, anyway, in Inmendham's worldview.
Well, again, the worth is a more complex part of the diagram, so it's silly to say there's no. Okay, what's all being argued is that worth is a manifestation of a something simpler, like quanta is manifests into complex matter. Well, the same thing happens with the fundament, okay, the quanta of this thing of gratification. and we can gain gratification because of psychological wiring in arbitrarily different ways, but those ways don't really make any difference. The end game is the rat, cheese, joy scenario. Doesn't matter what quality the cheese is, doesn't matter how far the rat had to move to get it. The point is that's what's happening.
It is the idea of life being a futile, pointless game.
Yeah, well, whatever. Again, you're just going to keep saying the words, and you provide no argument defending it as anything other than that.
Once this is adopted, proceeding with complete transformation from analogy back to reality as an embodied fact. And
well, it isn't transferred anyway, so again, in the analogy, I would argue is that every other theory of game is analogous to this fundamental game created by nature. So again, I'm going to argue the first cause of gaming was nature's mechanism of replication and the dynamic of natural selection. It is the first game. So I'm using the original, jackass.
This can, and objections to this are dismissed as stupid.
Well, you don't provide the objections, asshole. What is your objection? Epigenetics? It's not an objection. What is your love? Love is not a rational objection. It's a piece of shit. It's a nothing argument. What is your argument, jackass? I haven't heard your counter argument, fuckhead for brains, except I can make up shiny star. I love shiny star. Therefore, the universe isn't futile because you love shiny star. You think that's a fucking argument? Fucking insane.
That his point of view is the only point of view. That given that there is no meaning to life, and this that I would concede that there isn't the option.
There's no value outside of the value of the welfare of the sentient beings. That's what it means by being it's futile and without purpose. So there's no redeeming cause. I have made this argument over and over. You complain that I've said it over and over, and yet you apparently have never heard it. Alright? You can justify making a mess when you're rushing to a fire, because there's an overriding cause. There's a function, a purpose, that will justify some road recklessness in getting to the crisis situation where you may be of some use. There is no crisis for us to resolve. There's no emergency. There's no fire for us to put out. So the point is, whatever value we have to create it here in ourselves. We can't look out there for it. We can't justify the dead by pointing to some cause. It's not that complicated, shit.
And that I can choose for myself to choose my own meanings.
Well, there you go. I can choose for myself to choose my own meanings. That's your axiom. I'm saying that axiom is a non-starter. It is obnoxious to any notion of reality and truth. It breaks any point in having any conversation about anything. When you can go into a conversation about any subject and say, I can just make it up, there's no point. Alright? So unless I can find something relevant and meaningful and something that makes some sense to my life experience, I'm proposing that it makes sense to most people's life experience that they can tell the difference between having a fucking brain tumor and having a cupcake. They can tell the difference. There's one that's a good thing and one thing that's a bad thing. That they can understand that. What you're putting on the table is you will make up a lie, put it in my face and say somehow it's equal to that statement. I'm saying I don't see the equality, I don't see the equity. You're saying prevention has no value, zero value. If I prevent an earthquake, it would have no value. If I cured cancer, it would have no value. If I did anything to prevent harm in sentient beings, it has zero value. That was your axiom, asshole. How am I to relate to that as being at all sensible? It is contrary to every year and every day and every hour I have spent on this planet. The truth that's been yelled at to me by every fact I've gleaned. No fact that I have gleaned indicates that it is of no value to prevent unnecessary harm in sentient beings.
And give to my life its own meanings, and judge for myself its own worth.
Well, again, this, it has been explained over and over. There's no way to explain any other way. You can't talk about fuel efficiency in cars where you all of a sudden say, I'm not counting gasoline as the cost of the car, and the fuel it consumes, and I'm not going to count miles it travels as the producing of the car. I'm instead going to think shiny paint matters, and the only cost of the car is the cost of the rubber tires. And then you're going to have a fuel economy. We're going to compare notes on fuel economy. There's no point. We can't compare notes. We can't have a conversation, a rational conversation. So, yes, your make up the value notions are obnoxious and idiotic from my perspective. They have nothing to do with the function of human beings or the function of anything in this universe. It's nonsensical to say you can make up the standards. I sat there and said, for the sake of argument with all human beings on this planet, I'm having a conversation based on the notion that consciousness does matter, in fact, that the sentient experience is the only thing of value that we can discern from the entire universe, and that's the foundation of conversation. You won't accept that? Fine. I've said, fuck you. You're insane. I don't really want to deal with some asshole who can't figure out that he can't figure out the difference from getting run over in the street and lollipops. Okay, you're too fucking stupid.
Inmendham, in solidifying this analogy, prohibits and this point of view, and is dismissive of this point of view.
Yeah, I don't. And I've explained why. Making up the truth is insane. There's a truth here. There's no other standard by which you measure a car's efficiency, okay? The fuel is expensive. It goes in as not a necessity of it sitting there. It doesn't need fuel for any other purpose but then to go miles per gallon. It's obvious there's a connection between the gasoline and the miles you're going to go. There's a huge connection between those two things. You will go no miles if there's no gasoline. The fuel you're paying and the price the rewards you're getting are clearly connected. I can't make anything out of your bullshit. Why would I spend $27,000 for pretty red paint? I wouldn't.
And in such is entrenching a superficial point of view. Insofar as that he
so he thinks it's superficial to attempt to describe the universal reality, something sensible to all the facts that are gleanable, or something he just made up in his own brain. Some Donald Duck theory he has. He says Donald Duck killed John F. Kennedy. Okay, everybody's supposed to take that seriously. There's no evidence for it. He can't demonstrate it in any way. It doesn't relate in one way, in one single intuitive way, emotional way, sensible way, logical way, to anything I know about how the universe works, and yet he's saying I'm supposed to accept it. Fuck you, I'm not going to accept it. It's idiotic. You made it up. It's a story.
He doesn't want to deal with the objection that I might have to this analogy.
The objection from fantasy. You're making the argument from fantasy is legitimate. Fantasy is not legitimate. You have to have an argument based on some sort of reasonable premise that is in some way going to relate to something I can understand. I can't possibly understand. You make up any kind of bullshit mud pie, serve it up to me and say it's food. I'm saying no, it's made out of mud, shithead. You didn't make that out of a fact.
Encompassing a reality and a factual will as a fact, and that it might be the, you know, my objections to it being the only valid point of view here.
He keeps talking about his objections to it being the only valid point of view, and he has offered no alternative point of view. He's just, his alternative is, I can make up a story if I want to. I can pretend preventing harm doesn't have any value. And he's saying I'm obligated to respect that. Why am I obligated to respect that? It's insane. It's rubbish. It's nonsense. There's nothing to indicate that has any hope of being consistent with the truth. So they just missed that. And part of it, I'd say they missed, part of it... I'd be back. They don't... I'm back. Getting tired. So anyway, so in this part of the video I say my famous line, you know, whatever, you know, precious commodities being controlled by crude forces kind of argument. That's just in my opinion. There's no counter argument to that fact. And what else? So yeah, and then I point at the camera and go, you know, what people need to do is recognize that, yeah, we're all assholes. And we're going to have to do a lot better than this. And that's why the global warming is just about to start boiling us. You know, it's because we're assholes. And, you know, that's somehow you're not allowed to say that. Yeah, right. The human race, throughout its whole history, is there anything to be proud of in there? Yeah, I think asshole is the proper conclusion.
So as we can see, what's Inmendham doing here other than what I've said? Other than elevating his personal point of view.
I mean, this whole idea, again, why bother making videos with anybody if you're going to use that as the argument, right? If somebody pulls that on Dawkins or some other person in a debate somewhere, everybody will be going, oh, please. All right? He's making an argument, asshole. He's defended the argument with lengthy arguments explaining biology and physics and chemistry and all this other shit and dynamics. And you're going to sit there and blow a stinker like that into the room and call it his personal philosophy. I mean, it's just such a cheap, idiotic shot, especially when it's your argument that philosophy is personal. That somehow you get to tell everybody else how the universe works, and they don't have to think it makes any sense at all. You don't have any obligation to say something, you know, put 2 or 3 words together that at least sound like a coherent sentence. You haven't put anything together. All I've gotten from you so far is preventing harm has no value. And that's the cornerstone of your brilliant philosophy. Preventing harm has no value.
Unjustifiable by my account, above everybody else, that everybody else is a victim of their psychology.
Well, again, it's not everybody else, so again, you want to just play some silly little numbers game and not deal, again, don't argue the argument, argue the arguer, argue the group of arguers, argue the history of arguments, but don't argue what the person is saying. Yeah, keep living up to your you know, my low expectations. Be a weasel.
He alone has the truth. Everybody else is trapped in superficiality. Only he sees the depth and truth of life. Right,
that's why I kept mentioning the book that you couldn't be bothered to read, whose name of the author you were putting in the title of your video. You were titling videos, I Defeat Benatar. You never read his book. Right. You just don't know how to play this fair at all, do you?
Life is a crude game. if you don't get that, you're stupid.
Yeah, well, if you don't get that, you must have some other thing you've gotten. And the only thing you could possibly get that is not crude in origin would be a god. Can you understand that? Or at least a salamander. What is the nature of the non-crude function? The non-crude force? Where is it?
There is no purpose. Lament, lament, lament.
It's not a lament, it's a statement of fact. So once again, as soon as Dawkins says something like, well, human beings are great apes. Oh, just some more monkey talk. Yeah, we are monkeys. Ha ha ha. That's all you're doing here. I mean, it is a lamentable fact, is it not? That we have, throughout history, horribly ruined people and animals all over the place. And it's quite lamentable that we're doing all that and there's nothing we rescued. We never put out a fire. If you had a fire department that ran people over every day, that never put out a fire, you'd be pretty lamenty about it.
3,000 videos, all saying the same thing. Life is inefficient.
Yeah, well, Darwin wrote, what, 600 pages, 700 pages, just saying the same thing. Evolution, evolution, evolution. You see, I mean, you suck.
According to Inmendham, yet he never, this is a metaphorical inefficiency in the context of this game that he rams down our throats.
Whatever, this simple premise that I ram down your throat, that the fuel of the game we're playing, the fuel of the automobile we're running, is suffering, and the profit, if you can call it that, is the sense of satisfaction. And then I'll go further to elaborate that even in that scenario, it's not fuel efficient enough. And I think the scenario is even worse than that, which is that your sense of profit is really just getting yourself out of trouble. So the car never really goes anywhere. It's just that the engine actually starts and the wheels spin, but you don't go anywhere.
Snake Plisskenist, I think, and myself at times, when you find the evaporation of the content of Inmendham's words, the lack of content.
Yeah, whatever. Again, this is arguing the argument. So there's some kind of lack of coherency in this basic idea that evolution created tool-enabled organisms. The tool we got was a sentient and imaginative brain. Through this use of that scheming tool, that feeling and scheming tool, we became better navigators of the maze, acquired more food, killed more competitors, and therefore gained our success over time. That there's something in that statement you don't care for.
Concrete solidity. If you were to pose the question, how is it inefficient?
Well, again, we've been over this. There's at least two arguments that can be made. But there's the nature argument, the asymmetry, which I've said over and over, the unneeded need, which creates a problem, the absent purpose or function, the absent potential to create a real hard good, that is, a good made out of the relief of some harm. There's nothing in trouble, we're not rescuing anything by being here. That argument. And then there's the imposition argument, which is a whole nother argument where, yes, you can't create slaves to your notions of accomplishment. You have to have more than a notion of accomplishment to justify risking somebody else's imprisonment.
Efficiency is defined as the measure of the output given the input. Yeah, it's a ratio of input to output, if you like. given in percentage terms, times by 100. Okay.
Right, and how high we've demanded a very high efficiency rate for aircraft travel, right? We spend a lot of money maintaining airplanes to increase the efficiency of them not dropping human beings out the windows and stuff, not killing people. So we've valued that, not harming people, and to a very high level.
What are the requirements? If life has no purpose, then it has no required output.
Well, again, this argument's been made more than once, but the point of the purpose thing is to say there's no goal. That doesn't mean there's not still a game being played, which means there's a contest on the field, and the field players are still playing a value game. So even if you play chess to a draw, let's say, nobody wins, let's say. The fact is you still annihilated players, and there was players that won. So players got the gratification of winning, other players got the pain of the agony of losing. There was the ecstasy and the agony. And so there's still value on the board, even though neither goal was scored. No goal was scored.
Therefore, it can't be have an inefficiency value in a sense, and
it can't have efficiency. That's what he just said, right? So if again, my premise was that the values coming in and out of this machine is gratification, satisfaction of a need, and the harm, torture, suffering, agony experienced by people and animals. So the cost, the gasoline is the pain, the gain is in the form of the gratification or the satisfaction and the comfort. And so you're telling me that without a goal, without some bigger objective beyond that existing, that doesn't exist. And I'm saying of course that exists. That's where the efficiency is. And I have used the metaphor of no purpose by saying there's no damsel in distress over there. There's plenty of damsels in distress on earth. There's plenty of people burning up in fires. There's plenty of people who need rescuing on earth. But there's nothing outside of earth to go rescue. That's the point, shithead.
If it has, it's one imposed by you and your value set.
And that's a fundamental premise of all argument at all time. There's always going to be premises. Alright? I mean, you know, what do you want me to say? I don't understand. I can't lay it out any clearer. I don't believe in God. I don't think there's any evidence of a God. I don't think there's any fundamental purpose. The process is called evolution. Evolution creates a phenomenon called consciousness. I have experienced consciousness. I have familiarity with it. It tells me, I'm informed by being conscious. By being conscious, I'm informed of the power of the sensations we feel, and I have decided they are intrinsically and fundamentally important. They are. Bottle is not important, consciousness is important. Dead brain, not important. Living brain, important. And it's only important because it can feel. If it can't feel, then it might as well be a dead brain. Yeah, those are my premises. I can't go anywhere in conversation anywhere off of those foundations. If you believe consciousness doesn't exist, or you believe it doesn't mean anything, you're free to do that. I can't relate to you at all. I'd rather relate to a fucking lizard. I'd rather relate to a syphilis microbe than to you. Okay? Because you're too stupid. You're not just ignorant. You're willfully, deliberately, completely, maniacally trying to avoid the truth. Because there's absolutely no way you can't know, that you'd rather eat a cupcake than die in a concentration camp.
You know, Interestingly, I've just made videos. Would anybody like to escape out of the logic of what I'm saying by saying, this is axiological reasoning. Efficiency can mean anything we like. Efficiency isn't a measure of input over output. In axiological reasoning, well, I start off with whatever I want us to be, and I assume this, and then I get this output. But this
again, I don't know what do you want me to argue? You're the one claiming first that there isn't any efficiency, I guess, and then second that you don't believe these values articulated are the values. Where do we have room for an argument? You don't believe in any element of what I consider to be fundamental logic, which is I deduce from experience and observation, okay, the huge difference between sentience and non-sentience. I have concluded that sentience is the only thing in the universe that means anything, because the rest of it is in dirt. The rest of it is fucking rocks and dirt. It has no complex character. I have complex character. I am exhibiting phenomenon that reeks of significance, value significance, in the sense that every word I have to describe something of value, every word that has anything to do with attraction and repulsion, every word that has something to do with negative and positive, of that dynamic of gravity, of weight, of meaning, of substance, is related to the creation of a sensation. And you're telling me that somehow that should mean nothing to me. How can it possibly not mean something to me? How can I not be persuaded by that evidence, you fucking retard? What are you offering? Prevention has no value.
This is nothing more than defining yourself correct. It's not an actual argument where you move from statements, undeniable statements about generalities, to undeniable conclusions about specifics. In this lack of specificity.
I mean, I don't know how. Can you get more specific? What do you want me to explain? Every single four-legged, four-toed animal that we evolved through to become human? Do I really have to do that? What specifics do you need? What specifics are absent that you're hungry for? What missing link do I have to dig up for you to demonstrate the significance, the obvious difference between plastic bottle and sentient brain? What other fact do you need me to provide you to demonstrate that this has qualitative experiences and this does not?
You find the dialogue of Inmendham illusory and artificially abstract.
Right. Artificially abstract. Plastic bottle, sentient brain. Very different. Wow, that's so fucking abstract. There's no way you could tell that's a boob. I mean, come on. I can't draw it any simpler.
And strained and overly vague.
Strained, right. Okay, the idea of not having a cupcake is different than having a Holocaust. That those two things are somehow different. It's not the same kind of harm. Not having a cupcake I don't even really care about, or having a Holocaust. Yeah, they are different. If I have a choice to not have a cupcake or have a Holocaust, I think I'm going to choose not to have a cupcake.
With purpose. With purpose, I would accuse psychologically to...
I would accuse. Well, yeah, you've done everything else. You have done everything else, and we, your group of we's who you do not define, the we who have decided. It's just hilarious. Oh.
To facilitate ambiguity and latitude of movement, to evade concrete criticism.
Right. So again, where is that? Where is first? Show me, somebody in the comments. Show me the concrete criticism. Show me the concrete alternative theory of truth, the rational theory of truth. Show me a fact I've proposed as a fact, and show me any evidence that the fact isn't true. What has he done? Nothing. So there's nothing he's provided that's concrete, and everything he's provided is illusory, arbitrary, and fundamentally non-existent as a counter-argument. He has provided no coherent counter-argument besides, I'll get around to making one up someday, but I'm just going to make one up. I'm just going to claim Daffy Duck did it, so you can't convict OJ. But I'm not going to prove it.
Inmendham talks about precious commodities. Precious on whose value set?
Well, I mean, again, there's no point. The point of the commodity is that the commodity, I've said it in the other video, right? I even, in the video I think you're actually responding to, or the one right before it, you know, that the goose lays the golden egg. So by default, the goose is precious because it's laying the precious commodity, which is the golden egg. So it's the feelings that have the value. We just happen to be the thing that manifests or creates the feeling, so we're by default precious. And it's crude forces controlling the precious commodities is the rest of the statement. So again, get that right too. But I mean, if you can't recognize that, again, that's an axiom. If you can't recognize that feeling organisms are by intrinsic fundamental nature of their capacity to create things called sensations, they are by default, by intrinsic function, value rich.
And where do you at length articulate an argument for why things are precious? What?
Well, again, I can't do it. It's an axiom. It's a premise. It's the fundamental source of value. How do I get any lower than the fundamental creator of value? I've said the words. I believe sentient organisms create value by experience, conscious experience. Can I say it any clearer than that? You either agree that sentient organisms having experiences is valuable, or you don't. And you clearly don't. You don't care whether something is feeling suffering or not feeling suffering. You, if it was up to you, you couldn't tell the difference. If you could make 10 cents torturing something, you would, apparently. So I don't have any real will to treat you with any respect, because you don't respect something that is the fundamental nature of your own consciousness. Because if it was you who was being maligned and treated like that, if your conscious experience was negated like that, if I negated the existence of your suffering and bargained over a piece of rat hair for it, if I traded your welfare for a piece of rat hair, you would be pretty fucking offended, asshole. You'd be like, hey, Gary, how the fuck could you do that? How the fuck could you know what sentience is and trade it for a rat hair? You'd be pretty pissed off, fuckhead. It should happen to you. It really goddamn should. You belong in a goddamn laboratory having cancer shot up your ass.
Things are precious. This begs the simplicity of the reasoning of Inmendham.
Yeah, the simplicity of the nature of fucking organisms on planet Earth. We evolved, shithead. There's two basic sensations that feeling organisms have. Good and bad. It's a whip and a carrot. In my opinion, it's all whip, but it doesn't matter. The idea is motivation. You motivate something by relieving pressure or imposing pressure. It's a pretty fucking simple concept, jackass. Like gravity, fuckhead.
It's best illustrated, I think, fairly recently. He often touts, when pressed for what the fundamentals of his reasoning are, one of the facets he cites is,
it's a premise, you fuck. Yeah, that's one of the things I cite.
Well, yeah, fairness. Obviously, we must be fair, okay?
So now you're making the different argument, right? So now you're taking the game, and now you're going to talk about the fairness argument, which has to do with the imposition argument. So you're not on the Benatar subject anymore. Now you're on another subject, and you can't even figure that out.
And it seems that he is completely blind to the complexity of the fairness arguments.
Well, I think we know it when we see it. Like, everybody gets the same size bat, or, you know, you have rules about, you know, how you play the game, and all the play, like horses in a race. Well, they go around the track, so you randomly choose who gets what stall, you ring a bell, and all the gates open at the same time. Everybody can figure out that that seems pretty fucking fair.